In national parks all around the world, breathtaking scenery awaits us. Nature on a majestic scale embraces us. Creatures great and small greet us. All of these wonders are also present in Japan's national parks. But that's not all. In Japan's national parks, numerous people look after these historic backdrops and live in these age-old landmarks. In Japan's national parks, you will find people who make these parks their home. And where there are people, you will encounter history, you will experience culture, and you will witness faith and beliefs. In these lands, people and nature coexist in harmony. These are Japan's national parks. Become part of the story. Come to Japan's national parks. Stories to experience.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Sky Whitehead. I'm the Chief Producer for Planning and Business Development here at Japan House Los Angeles. And today I'm really delighted to have special guests with us, Lucas Badke-Berko from Paper Sky Magazine, and Lemi Duncan, a frequent contributor to NHK, or the Japan Broadcasting Corporation, for a webinar featuring Japan's national parks entitled Hidden Views and Untold Stories. We'll be talking a little bit about what's unique and what's exciting about Japan's national parks, their natural beauty, of course, but also the different types of experience that await you there. First, though, I'd like to turn it over to Yuko Kaifu, the president of Japan House Los Angeles.
Thank you, Sky. Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. For those of you who could see the introductory video, weren't they beautiful and enticing? I enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Those of you who recently visited Japan House Los Angeles must have recognized that we are currently presenting in the entrance area an overview of Japan's national parks and video series of some of the 34 Japanese national parks. The webinar today will take a deeper look into the unique cultural experiences that the travelers to those national parks encounter, the way that reverence for nature is integrated into Japanese culture, the regional foods that are available, and fellow travelers and local people that they meet along the way. We're very lucky to have two experts as our speakers today who will navigate us through the journey. I'd also like to express our appreciation to Japan International Broadcasting TV, Ministry of the Environment, the Agency for Cultural Affairs, and Japan Arts Council, who developed the beautiful content of the Japan National Parks video series and for allowing us to use bits and pieces of them during the program. I hope you have a chance to visit those parks sometime in the future when tourism to Japan becomes possible again. But in the meantime, I hope you really enjoy the program. Now I'd like to turn it back to Sky. Sky?
Thank you, Yuko. So first, just a few little housekeeping notes. please turn your attention to the screen. Audience microphones for this webinar are muted and audience videos are turned off. Chat is enabled. If you'd like to follow it, you can press the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. However, if you'd like to submit questions, there is separately from the chat icon a Q&A icon, and you can please use the Q&A tool to submit questions in English, please. We'll select as many questions as we can at the end. We love to get to them. However, the Ministry of the Environment, one of the partners in today's program, will answer as many questions also as they can separately by following up via email after today's webinar. When you submit a question, you have opportunity to either submit it anonymously, in which case we would not have your email to do a follow-up, but if you would like to submit it non-anonymously, then we would love to follow up for any questions that we're unable to get to today. And then lastly, we are recording the webinar and we will post an edited version of it on our website as soon as we're able to. Today's program and our on-site presentation about Japan's national parks was developed in partnership with Japan's Ministry of the Environment, which manages the 34 parks that comprise the system across the country. Today, we have a video message from Mr. Takahiro Okano. He works as a director for the promotion of the national parks. He has been with the agency since 1997, actually starting as a park ranger, and he had experience on site at Asokuju National Park, which is the first one I ever visited, and Iriomote National Park. His life's work is to protect nature's bounty while utilizing it to promote responsible and thoughtful regional development and revitalization. And so without further ado, we'll share a short video message from him and then jump on in.
Hello. 環境省国立公園利用推進室長の岡野です。今日は日本の国立公園についてご説明いたします。日本の国立公園は現在北は利尻礼文佐呂別から南は西表石垣まで全国で34カ所が指定されています。日本を代表する雄大で美しい自然の風景地が指定をされています。原生的な自然だけでなく、さまざまな風景に出会うことができます。日本は狭い国土ながら南北に長くさまざまな生態系が存在しています。北部の気候は亜寒帯気候に属しています。北海道のオホーツク海沿岸では季節的に流氷が接岸し、これに由来する栄養分により豊かな海洋生態系が育まれています。また北海道や日本の東北部には雪もたくさん降ります。南部の気候は亜熱帯気候に属しています。海にはサンゴ礁が広がり、海水と淡水が混ざる河口にはマングローブの森が広がっています。春には桜、夏には若葉、秋には紅葉、冬には雪。温暖で雨の多い日本は豊かな森林に恵まれ、季節風の影響もあり、はっきりとした四季の変化を見ることができます。また、国立公園には多くの聖地が含まれています。このため、寺社仏閣が多く存在し、これも特徴的な風景になっています。日本の国立公園には人の暮らしがあります。人の暮らしとともにある風景もまた、日本の国立公園の特筆すべき風景です。野焼きによって維持されている草原、牡蠣の養殖のいかだの風景、水を張った水田の風景、人のなりわいによって生み出され、維持されてきた風景は、原生的な自然とは異なる文化的な風景です。このような人の営みと自然の恵みで生み出される食もまた大きな魅力の一つです。そして上質な雪でのスキー、多様な海岸線でのカヌー、火山の恵みの豊かな温泉など魅力あるアクティビティを楽しむことができます。ゆっくりと楽しんでいただけるコンテンツが満載です。日本の国立公園の魅力は伝わりましたでしょうか。コロナが落ち着きましたらぜひ日本の国立公園に足をお運びください。
All right. Thank you to Mr. Okano for that video. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Lucas, or Lucas BB, as he's known. Was born in the USA. He was raised in San Francisco, and actually since the young age of 12 years old, he's always been kind of driven to create media. He's been producing video, inspirational and organic media, print as well, since the age of 12. And then in 1993, after graduating college, on the very next day, traveled to Japan, where he was quick to find freelance work, writing in the culture and kind of lifestyle areas for magazines like Time, Wired, and the Japan Times. In 1996, he bought a straw hat, rolled up his APC shirt sleeves, and published Tokyon. Tokyon was a fabled magazine. It's actually back in print now, but put Japanese youth culture on the global map. In 2002, Lucas began to wear cycle caps. He grew a beard, and he created Paper Sky. Via Paper Sky's unique ethno-travel viewpoint, he creates content that seamlessly blends and bends time, culture, and nature into fresh new flavor for the future. When Lucas isn't walking 30 kilometers a day along old Japanese paths or riding his bicycle in rural Japan, he's probably relaxing in his garden and drinking mint tea. However, today, it's a pleasure to have him with us. Welcome, Lucas.
Hello.
Hey, Lucas, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. So before we jump in the area of the national parks, first, I just wanted to kind of open it up a little bit to talk about Paper Sky. Paper Sky is, for me, it's been kind of a touchstone kind of hallmark magazine with a real kind of interesting like point of view, kind of lifestyle angle that connects a lot of dots for me, and I think for a lot of curious travelers out there. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, we've been making Paper Sky now for the last 20 years. We originally started it after Tokyo, just because I got older. I was really young when I started making Tokyo, and I wanted to make a magazine that I could keep on doing for a long time. And I thought travel was a great way, because there's always culture no matter where you go. And if we could go and explore different places from our kind of unique viewpoint and then show that culture as well as the nature of that place, we thought it would be a successful magazine. And so we've been doing that for a long time now. We do Japanese issues. Usually it's about half Japanese, the content, and usually about half about some other place in the world. Obviously now, because of Corona, we've focused entirely on the Japanese, different prefectures in Japan. And one of the issues we'll talk about now is obviously about Japan, and it'll be about the national parks.
Awesome. So let's just jump in then. I've noticed that actually a lot of the issues tend to have a little bit of national parks material through them, but this issue kind of focused on Kyushu and the 4 national parks. Do you want to jump in?
So this issue was all about Kyushu, and there's actually 5 national parks in Kyushu. One is in Yakushima. That was kind of a longer trip. So we decided to focus on the main part of Kyushu and visit all of the 4 national parks within 2 weeks. So we did a 2-week trip, and we did it all by van. You can see on the cover here, we're riding in our van, which was a nice experience. And I think that's becoming a very popular way to travel in Japan as well. What we wanted to show the culture of the national parks, because in Japan, I think that's a very unique aspect compared to in the States. In the States, you're basically, in a good way, you're totally surrounded by nature. Whereas in Japan, people have been living there for a very, very long time. Right. The very first national park, which I'll show you in a couple more slides, was about 85 years ago. So it's kind of, for Japan history, it's very recent that there's been national parks. So there's always been people living in these places, which is one of the unique points, I think, of visiting the Japanese national parks, besides the great scenery. So we wanted to show the people, and we thought a good way to show the people was to try to make a sandwich based on each of the national parks that we visited. And we also wanted to create an image of the national parks, because in the States, like, everybody wants to go to Yosemite. You see Half Dome, and you see nice posters, and even if you haven't been to Yosemite, and even if you're not an American, you live somewhere else, everybody knows Yosemite National Park. But you'd be really hard pressed to have even Japanese people name one national park. So we wanted to kind of put this image of different national parks into people's mind. And we did that by creating 4 posters for each of the parks that we visited. So this is a Saikai National Park. which, by the way, for people who might have seen The Last Samurai, is the very first scene, the opening scene. And it's obviously, it's a beautiful photo, but this kind of photo you can see in lots of different places in Japan. And by seeing this photo, you don't necessarily know this is Sakai National Park. So if you go back to the previous one, it kind of leaves more of an impression in your mind. So hopefully after today's talk, maybe some people will see some of these posters and they'll be, okay, that image is still in my mind. And when they're able to come to Japan, they can visit some of these places. This is the first national park was made in Japan, called Unzen Amakusa National Park. In America, it's about 100 years ago, I think, the national park started, whereas in Japan, it's been 85 years. So it's not so much of a difference. I think in America, it's done a great job of creating national parks and making that part of the culture and the heritage. Whereas in Japan, the culture and the heritage has always been there, but the national parks haven't really so much maybe been part of that. So by doing these kind of talks and getting more people to visit the national parks and kind of creating these images, I think that's a good direction, because there are really so many beautiful and various places and various nature. For me, it's so interesting that you can see bears and monkeys within 3,000 kilometers of each other. So you can see our van there is kind of dwarfed by the mountain there. And this is another interesting thing about a lot of Japan's national parks is this mountain is really new. It was created, I think, in the 90s over the course of 4 or 5 years. So you can see how the vegetation is just kind of starting to peak in there. And the reason is because there's so many volcanoes. So we'll get to some more. Pretty much all of the national parks that we visited have volcanoes. So we'll see some of those in some later slides here. So this is the Asokujo, which Sky mentioned that he had visited as well. This is also super unique and maybe one of my favorite national parks as well. In the foreground, you'll see this called a akaushi, a red cow, which is a unique breed of cow for Japan. And these guys eat the best grass maybe in the world. So when they're sold for beef, they can get a very high price for them. It's interesting that the cows in the national park are working together. They also have traditional burning methods of keeping the grass down in this area as well. And they do festivals and around these about maybe once every 2 years, I think it is that they do that.
It's interesting, because the national park was really kind of built around not taking a place that has very little development and always keeping it out, but taking a place that sometimes, is abundant in its natural beauty, but also on top of that has an ecology that exists of people that live there, of the existing villages, maybe their foodways, in this case, the agriculture, and they build it around that and preserve the opportunity for that to continue to exist in that type of, in that landscape. And this all becomes part of the national park.
Exactly. So another thing about the Asokujo National Park, there was a good photo in the movie that we saw in the beginning. This one, you have to peek over the cliff here. But these people are living in a huge crater. It's about 120 kilometers in circumference. But I've traveled a lot of places in the world, but I've never seen so many people living in such a huge crater anywhere, which just in itself is it's really fascinating that you can live your whole life inside of a volcanic crater, which is definitely worth going to see on its own. And this is the Hiroshima Kinkowa National Park. And again, this is a volcano that explodes probably once every 2 or 3 days. And you can see the city in the foreground here. And I don't know if people watching are familiar with sentos, or public baths in Japan, but all of the public baths in the Kagoshima area, they're all onsens. So you can go to any sento for about $3 and experience an onsen. And I think they have about 10 to 15 of them within the city. So again, super interesting experience. So in order to make our sandwich, we went to visit a lot of small kind of makers. So this is a soy sauce factory. And on your trip, you can visit these places as well. Some of them you should call in advance. Some of them have small shops that you can also pick up stuff that they sell. This is the soy sauce maker we went to visit. And then we picked up some, after you mix soy sauce, you get a lot of leftover soybeans and the skin of them. And they're still kind of flavored with the soy sauce. So we decided that would be a kind of a unique thing to use for our sandwich. And you'll see that in the final, one of the final slides. So go to the next one here. This is another very interesting project that we saw along our voyage. It's called Kitos. It's a chocolate manufacturer. And they're working with people with disabilities as well as people without disabilities are all working side by side. And people with disabilities are helping to create the package design of them. They're helping to bake the chocolate. It's all bean to bar, the whole operation. And they make really nice, in Japan, they call them omiyage, which people tend to buy it everywhere and to give to their friends afterwards. And we use this in one of our sandwiches as well. This is another farm that we went to visit. This guy, Koko Miso, he does everything all by himself. So he's originally a graphic designer, and he decided to start to grow soybeans, and then he ferments them, turns them into miso, and then he also makes his own salt. And then he obviously makes his own package, and it's super delicious, oishi miso.
So all of his salt, all of these things are being locally sourced and kind of brought together here.
Yeah, yeah. But he does it all by himself. He makes the salt, he makes the soybeans, he does the farming, he does the design. So we went fishing. You can see the captain here on the right. We were catching a mahi-mahi fish. So we wanted to make one of the sandwiches fish sandwich because of this area. It's a big fishing population. You can see the captain, he wasn't looking so happy. He was really angry at everyone in the beginning. We were just catching mahi-mahi, which is his regular catch. But then you go to the next slide and we got a big maguro. And the captain instantly became super happy because he's obviously going to be able to sell this for a good price. So, and then we got really happy too. So this is hiking around the side we saw of the cow, same area, the Aso Kyushu National Park. And again, you see a nice volcano in the background. We were fortunate to visit each park with a park ranger, which is a very unique experience because in Japan, there aren't actually so many park rangers out there. But because if you do visit with a park ranger, there are a lot of guides, private guides that you can contact and walk around the park with, which is nice because they can introduce you to the history and the culture.
And Lucas, I'm curious here where we're walking around these active volcanic areas. How do they handle, for example, on a day-to-day basis, the activity of the volcano may change, et cetera?
Yeah. So like this volcano, there's a road leading up to the volcano, and you can actually, on the top right of this slide, you can actually peek in on this angle and see the volcano. But obviously, if it's an exploding day, they have the road closed off and you can't get, I think it's about a mile, they have it backed off. And obviously, if it gets worse than that, they have another road that they block off. So they're obviously looking at the activity every day and making sure that it's safe to let people in. It's not just that the rocks are starting to fly around and lava might come out. It's also there's gases in the volcanoes and stuff like this that you need to be careful about as well. On this slide, one of the things we wanted to do, like easy hikes that anyone could do if they visit it. So for each of the 4 parks, we mapped out a hike with the ranger's advice that anyone can do with 2 and 3 hours. And then we bought kind of local snacks that you could also enjoy on the hike. So this one, you can see there's a small picture of a chiffon cake, they call them. I'm not sure if that's the English word as well or not, but they're very soft, spongy kind of cakes with different flavors. And this one had some beans in it, I believe. But again, this is in Aso. It's a very unique place where everyone's living in a crater. They also, all of the train stations have very small kind of local shops. And one of the small local shops at each of the train stations, one of them is a chiffon cake shop. So we purchased the cake there and took it on our walk and were able to enjoy it. Here, we're walking around an area. Some people might have seen the movie Silence. If you haven't seen it, it's a really good movie. A lot of really good Japanese actors in it as well, actresses as well. Here, we hiked around this small area where a lot of Christianity was banned. Probably a lot of people know in Japan until like about 100 and some years ago. And this area is one of the areas where a lot of Christians would go and hide so they would be safe here. And then you can walk around this area and you can see some of the kind of the relics that are still left there. We're kind of walking towards the sea here. You can see on the bottom right, one of the shrines. The interesting thing with all of these Christian shrines is they always made them look like Japanese shrines, because if they looked like Christian shrines, obviously their cover would be discovered. So here we found some really nice cinnamon tea is in the red package here, and some really probably the best tomato juice I've ever had in my life as well. The guy figured out a really good way to grow the tomatoes and a really good way to process the tomatoes. So with each sip, you're kind of drinking like 5 tomatoes at each gulp. We enjoyed the drink after diving into the ocean after our walk here. So this is one of the sandwiches that we made of the mahi-mahi that we caught. And then I mentioned the soy sauce, the sprinkles are on the top. This area has also got a lot of fugu. So if you visit one of the local fish markets, they've kind of created a fugu and oil paste. Fugu are the blowfish that have the poison in them. Obviously, they take the poison out. We made a tartar sauce with that, and then visited a local baker for the bread. So we kind of brought all of the culture in the area and the food together so that people can remember the park through the posters, they can remember the park through the hike, and they can remember the park through the sandwich experience.
I love that you've done this through the sandwich, by the way. You know, one thing that I hear consistently from people who've traveled to Japan is how surprised they are with the level of the bakery scene in Japan, which is, you know, at an incredible level, but also there's this really wide variety of the types of bread that are available, including this kind of very rustic, very kind of country style bread. And, you know, in a world where here in the US over the last couple of years, the Japanese sandwich, or, you know, sando has become a word now, and, you know, a concept called kombi went to become very, very famous with its Japanese egg salad sandwich. And there's been kind of a real moment for this kind of Japanese sandwich and all the variety of the types of food it can contain to kind of be part of the national food discussion here in the US. It's a really great way to kind of bring these ingredients together into something that where you can do something new and familiar and really leverage that local rustic flavor.
Yeah, arigato, thank you. It's interesting now because a lot of the local towns, like you said, bread is very popular. It doesn't mean that rice has disappeared at all. Rice is just as popular as ever as well. But there's lots of small towns with really good bakeries now. There's really good craft beer now. You can kind of visit each of these towns and enjoy that. So another sandwich that we made, we wanted to do a vegetarian sandwich. This woman, she's a macrobiotic chef. Maybe some people have heard of Kishi-san. He kind of brought the macrobiotic scene to the States. And so she's kind of like the leader in Japan of that scene. And she happened to live in Nagasaki. So we brought a bunch of vegetables that we gathered, and she put them together for us into this really beautiful vegetarian sandwich. Some of it is fried, some of it is pickled. We put some of it into paste. It's a pretty one.
Beautiful.
I think the next slide is a movie. So what we did for each of the national parks that we visited is we kind of made a mini movie. You saw us taking a little bath in that pool there. Was where the horses used to take their baths there a long time ago when they were tending the fields.
Very nice.
So that's our Kyushu experience and our trip through Kyushu, and some images and sandwiches and posters of the 2-week trip.
Beautiful, Lucas. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Next speaker, her name is Lemi Duncan. Lemi's a bilingual reporter. She's a voice actor, and MC with over 10 years of experience working in Japanese media, including for various NHK World programs. She's going to share from her experiences traveling at the Ise-Shima National Park, where she traveled for the At One with Nature series, as well as her extensive travel experience around Japan. Lemi's vegan. She's passionate about living an environmentally sustainable lifestyle, and she loves reporting about that. A lot of her work, by the way, requires her to show her serious side, but she is fluent in American and Japanese humor. She's actually quite the ham online if you give her a follow on the socials. And when she's not working, you can find her scuba diving, hiking, going to nature spots, kickboxing, working out, and traveling. And finally, she is a PADI open water rescue diver, certified, very experienced diver, and looking forward to COVID to end so that she can continue on her diving journey. So without further ado, Lemi, if I can invite you on.
Hi, Sky.
Hi there.
Thank you for moderating today.
My pleasure.
I just want to say that I do have a PADI rescue diver license, but I'm more on the side of needing to be rescued at this point after so many years of not diving because of COVID. But anyway, hello everyone. Konnichiwa or konbanwa for those of you who are in the US. I think it's evening, right? First off, I'd like to thank Japan House Los Angeles for having me today. This is my first webinar ever, and I'm really excited to be here and to get the opportunity to meet everyone. I know many of us are still battling with restrictions due to COVID-19, so it's really nice to be able to socialize in this way. I've always had a deep love for nature and travel, so being able to travel around Japan for work is a dream come true. Every city or nature spot I go to has a different allure to it. And there are so many things to see that essentially you can never get bored. There are still 9 prefectures that I haven't been to, and they're definitely on my bucket list. Tracking back, my first reporting job for NHK World was for Journeys in Japan back in 2014. As the title suggests, Journeys in Japan is about just that. The host travels to various localities in Japan and gets to have a feel of what life is like there. I had the opportunity to visit Kiryu City in Gunma Prefecture, which is in the Kanto region, not too far away from Tokyo. The funny thing about this report is that a few weeks prior to it, I had torn a ligament in my foot while playing indoor soccer, and I was on crutches. It was really devastating, but I was adamant about going to Kiryu. The staff of Journeys in Japan were so accommodating, and they helped me to do the report with minimal walking shots, which was really kind of them. So that's how my reporting career started, hobbling along on crutches. Today, I'm going to talk about the beautiful Ise-Shima National Park located in Mie Prefecture. Here is a map of Ise-Shima with its highlights. It spans a vast area of about almost 60,000 hectares and has an inland area that is rich in greenery and ancient forests that surround Ise-Jingu, Japan's most revered Shinto shrine, and a coastal area with sandy beaches and bays. What's unique about Ise-Shima National Park is that a large portion of it is private land, and the cities of Ise, Toba, Shima, and Minami Ise are home to many people. Before going to Ise-Shima, I wasn't aware that a significant population lives in the national parks of Japan. I think that's quite a unique characteristic and something that makes visiting the parks a special experience, as you can enjoy the beautiful nature as well as meet the local people. I'm always very touched by how friendly and kind-hearted Japanese people are. For example, if I ask someone for directions, instead of telling me verbally, many people offer to walk with me to take me there. If you are visiting Japan and don't speak Japanese, there may be a language barrier, as Japan is the primary language that is used, but please don't let that stop you from interacting with the local people, as you will find that sometimes a few simple phrases and body language is enough to connect and have a meaningful interaction. My days in Ise-Shima went by so fast, and they were filled with moments where I forgot there was a camera filming, as it felt so genuine and personal. The first place I'd like to show you today is Ago Bay. Here's a short clip.
Lemi's first stop is Ago Bay in the coastal Shima area.
Wow! Look at that spectacular view! Oh, amazing!
The Green Islands and cobalt blue ocean come together to create a scenic gem.
I feel like it's very rare that you see this much greenery.
This island-speckled landscape is said to have formed more than 10,000 years ago. Various plants took root, and the islands now remain green year-round.
One of the most impressive sights I saw during my time in Ise-Shima was Ago Bay. It is said to be comprised of about 60 big and small islands and has a ria coast. Some of you may recall that this is where the G7 summit was held in 2016. We wanted a clear shot of Ago Bay when we were shooting in the morning, but the rain caused Ago Bay to be crowned with mist, which gave it a mysterious look, no pun intended, like something out of a Ghibli film. It was absolutely amazing. As you just saw in the clip, there is an observatory deck called Yokoyama Observatory Deck, and right above the deck is a cafe. The view from the deck and cafe is breathtaking, and I personally would recommend going here even on a rainy day because Ago Bay looks just as beautiful, if not more so. And here is another picture of Ago Bay. Isn't that amazing? That's not really a landscape you see every day. And here is one of my best friends modeling for me. He doesn't talk much, but is an excellent listener. Maybe it's because he has big ears. Anyway, I like to do these little quirky things when I'm traveling because I think it's fun. And another unforgettable experience was visiting Ise-Jingu. I've been wanting to visit Ise-Jingu for a very long time. So when I heard that I would be able to visit, I was over the moon. To be honest, I'm not really a spiritual person, but there is a certain serenity at shrines and temples, which I really love. Here's a clip of Ise-Jingu.
This is Ise-Jingu. In the old days, most Japanese aimed to visit here at least once in their lifetime, and it remains a popular destination. Ise-Jingu is the collective name for the 125 shrines in the precinct. Lemi visits the most venerable sanctuary, the Naiku.
Ise-Jingu has a history of approximately 2,000 years, and it is huge. To give you an idea, the shrine and the surrounding land area are about the same size as Manhattan. That is amazing. During my time there, I felt like I was walking through a magical forest, and every acre was absolutely gorgeous. I love that much of the forest was left untouched. Ise-Jingu is surrounded by a forest, and the entire area is home to approximately 2,800 species of animals, 140 species of birds, and 850 species of plants. There is a river called Isuzugawa, which runs through the grounds, and its crystal clear waters are a testament of how well the surrounding nature is preserved. Here's another picture of Isuzugawa. These pictures don't really do it justice. It's so much more beautiful in real life, but you just have to go there. And there are Japanese cypress and cedar trees planted all over the grounds and chickens freely roaming around. Can we just take a moment to appreciate this chicken? This is a picture I took of this chicken. And well, how gorgeous is this chicken? You might wonder why chickens, but there is a reason. These chickens are called shinke, which means chicken of God. And they played an important role in one of the ancient tales featuring the most revered deity in the land, the sun goddess Amaterasu Omikami, which Ise-Jingu is home to. Seeing a chicken living its best life gives me great joy, and I wish that all chickens could be this free. Look how happy he looks. While at Ise-Jingu, I had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Ryosuke Akao, who is a Shinto priest. He told me about a ritual called Shikinen Sengu, which has been observed for the last 1,300 years. Every 20 years, a new divine palace, just like the current one, is constructed at an alternate site adjacent to the main sanctuary. During Shikinen Sengu, about 10,000 of the most beautiful, durable Japanese cypress trees are cut down to be used for this ritual. To be able to do something like this for 1,300 years takes a deep understanding of the cycle of nature and a respect for it, and also remembering to not only take from nature, but also to give back. In this day and age, we want quick, we want easy, and we also want affordable. This obviously doesn't agree with the cycle of nature, and it makes me stop and think about what kind of impact I'm having on the planet by my lifestyle choices and the products that I buy. Speaking of things that I buy, there are these tea bags with inspirational quotes on them that I love, and one read, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." When I read that, I really felt like we needed to learn to be more patient in order to coexist with nature. It sounds kind of cliche when I put it in words, obviously. And of course, we can't be perfect, but if each one of us chooses more products that are environmentally conscious, it can make a big difference for the planet. And I try to watch documentaries or read materials about the environment as a reminder to myself to remember what's truly important and to do my part. Moving on, another place I visited is Osatsu Town, which is home to ama divers. Ama divers are fisherwomen who dive without any equipment. Here's a picture of us at the ama hut. And these ladies were so kind. I'm a diver myself, and I love scuba diving, but it's very different because I have a tank full of air, whereas the ama divers free dive. They have a special breathing technique that allows them to be underwater without any equipment for an average of 40 seconds. And the ladies were diving 10 meters deep, all while working underwater, which is amazing, because when you're trying to do something, you exert so much more energy. And just being underwater for 40 seconds in itself while diving 10 meters deep is hard enough. So I was really impressed by them. As I talked to them, I realized how much the ocean has been a part of their lives since birth. They said that when they were children, there wasn't much to do. So jumping in the ocean after school was the most natural thing to do. It makes me sad that many children these days spend a lot of time on their tablets and phones and don't seem to spend as much time in nature. I've always felt that we humans have an instinctive need to connect with nature, but sadly, that feeling to connect seems to be fading away as more nature fades away, and the next best thing lies in a pair of VR goggles. The ama divers seemed so unfazed, untouched, unbothered by the pressure and influence of the rest of the world. They were healthy and full of energy, and I'm convinced that it's because they have an active lifestyle and spend so much time in nature. They even taught me a traditional dance. Here's a clip. 意外と難しいですね。全然できてないです。I hope you enjoyed that last scene of my world-class dancing. This was filmed in July, and I was sweating so much from the heat, the long sleeves, the fire burning, and knowing that my failure was caught on camera and being replayed right now. Why am I doing this to myself? But it's not about being good. And if I can just get a 1 or 2 from each one of you, I think it'll amount to a 10. So there you go, bonus points for the effort, right? The more we look and connect with nature, the more conscious we become of its importance. And I want to look inward to make sure that I do my part so that future generations can partake of nature's blessings. Because sustainability shouldn't just be a trend, right? It has to become a lifestyle. Ise-Shima is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And although I have been to many beautiful places around Japan, I have to say that I have never seen a place where nature and culture are preserved so splendidly. Make sure you have a lot of space on your phone because you're going to want to take a lot of pictures.
All right, thank you, Lemi. Really, really nice.
Thank you.
By the way, I'd also like to invite Lucas back for a little bit of a discussion Q&A session at the end. We actually have quite a few questions from the audience, but actually I'm really impressed with, this is why we go to nature, and this is why these epiphanies and these takeaways that we have, and when this is kind of combined with how it's interwoven with culture, I feel like there's like extra dimension that you can take that goes beyond just the one experience with nature. It's about how humans connect with each other and through nature and through these traditions. And it's wonderful to hear you tell this story. By the way, where are you planning on going next?
Well, there are many places I want to go, but there is a particular place I wanted to go to before I even knew it was a national park. It's Ose National Park, and they have a wooden boardwalk. And it seems to be really beautiful during the spring, during the summer and autumn. So I am definitely going to go there, hopefully within the next year.
Our opening slide today actually was a photo of that elevated wood plank walk. I've actually trekked there myself and actually snowboarded in the Ose area in the winter.
Snowboarding, wow.
Absolutely beautiful and highly recommended. Lucas, I know you've just come back from some trekking yourself. What recommendations do you have? A couple of people have actually asked for any like season-specific destination recommendations.
Well, the next place that I personally want to go is Amami Oshima. So I'm hoping to go there in December, where it shouldn't be so crowded because they have really nice beaches and places to swim. One of the unique things there is that you can dive with the whales. My wife, she went there a couple of months ago and was able to get like within a couple meters of these huge whales, which was a really amazing thing to just to see. So I just got back from a long walk, about 100 kilometers through the mountains from Tokushima to Kochi. It's not one of the so-called national parks, but it is a national park. I don't know quite how they categorize the different parks. I like to hike along roads, and a lot of the roads, I've come up with a name for the roads that I call them old Japanese highways, because for me, they're like roads that in Japan people used to, like a highway, like cars would go on today. People would walk all over these roads, and they've been totally forgotten about it because now everyone drives cars and doesn't have to go over 2,000-meter mountains to get to wherever they want to go. So, but I like to kind of rediscover these roads. So one of the road that I hiked was an old salt road that they would get this salt from Kochi, and then they would deliver it to places in the mountains of Tokushima.
Wow.
So I did that over 6 days. But there's a lot of these roads all over Japan, and a lot of them do go through national parks. But it's also interesting because a lot of them, they also go through small villages and towns, sometimes big cities. So definitely, Paper Sky, we have a regular series where we introduce these roads in each issue of the magazine. So if you have a chance, we have some content online as well in English that people can learn about some of these roads that we hike. I would also recommend the Rikuchu Kaigan. It's a hard one to remember. In Iwate, our new issue of Paper Sky is about Iwate. And they've recently created a 1,000-kilometer long trail that goes through this as well, which would keep you busy for probably 3 weeks to a month. And the Daisen Oki National Park is another really interesting one to recommend. I think in English you call it obsidian. In Japanese we call it kokuyoseki. It's a black rock. And it used to be that's what they would make their spearheads out of. And Oki was a huge kind of a place where they could get a lot of this rock and send it to all over Japan. It's a small island off of Shimane. You can walk along the beaches and sometimes even find the rocks still on the beaches there, which is an interesting experience. And then Kerama Shoto. There's so many. Kerama Shoto is another it's a beautiful clear ocean. And I think it's one of the most recent national parks maybe in the lineup. And you can hike on the trails and you can see whales while you're hiking, which I don't think there's many places you can do that either. So again, it's like bears and monkeys and tropical and super snowstorms. And Japan is such a compact island, but it's within that compactness, it's got such a rich variation, which makes it really unique.
Absolutely. By the way, we've had a couple of questions about the availability of the Paper Sky magazines here in the US. They can be ordered through your website online, which we included. They are in Japanese, but also there's quite a bit of English language content through the stories section of your website. And I know that some of these topics are covered there as well. By the way, you mentioned bears and monkeys. I had a few questions, actually more than I had ever anticipated about wildlife. And one question in particular, are there poisonous snakes in any of the national parks?
Yes, there are poisonous snakes. They're pretty dull and they don't really stand out so much. So you do have to watch out. They're mostly in the more tropical and warmer areas. So in those areas, if you're hiking, definitely look out for the snakes. It doesn't matter if they're huge or small, they've still got the same poison power. And I guess if you go up north, the thing to watch out for is the bears. People don't really think of Japan as having, huge bears, but they're out there. Definitely be careful of those two things. There's lots of wildlife that's not dangerous at all. And then you'll see a lot of deer. You'll see what they call a kamoshika, which is an original Japanese deer. Yeah. And they're very interesting because they just stare at you. They're like that. They don't run away. They just keep on looking at you forever until you walk away.
It's like, are we falling in love? Like,
yeah. It's kind of
when in the mountain, he's like, are you looking at me?
Yeah,
Because I'm looking at you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of wild boars as well, which aren't so good for the trails. They like to worm some underneath the dirt there, and they rip up all the roots. But yeah, that's a wildlife.
Nice. All right. And, I think this will actually have to be our last question in the interest of time, but
Okay.
maybe this to you as a vegan traveler in Japan.
Right.
How do you find that experience, and what are your go-to foods that you're able to enjoy consistently?
Well, I wasn't always a vegan, but after becoming vegan, I've had to do a lot of extensive research, and it hasn't been easy. So I'm not going to lie, but there are a lot of vegan options in Japan if you know how to look for them. There's miso, which if there's no dashi, fish stock in it, it's good to go. You're good to go. And there's a lot of different types of tofu, local tofu that's really good. And if you are brave, there's fermented soybeans, which is natto, one of my favorite foods. I'm addicted to it, but it's a bit, the taste is quite unique. So, and there's also a lot of seasonal vegetables and shojin ryori, which is Buddhist cuisine. And there's also just a lot of Japanese food is predominantly healthy, and they have a lot of vegetables. So if you know how to ask them to just take out the dashi, or to switch it up with some sea kelp dashi or shiitake mushroom dashi, there are a lot of things that you can eat actually. And when I went to Ise-Shima, I asked the restaurant staff to make the food vegan for me, and they were able to do it. And I had like a full course meal, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more like, ryokan, traditional Japanese inns now making those accommodations for travelers.
Yeah. Those
types of
are
diet.
that food is so great.
Wonderful meals. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I wish we had more time. As I told everybody, as many questions as we can also answer, especially through the Ministry of Environment after the webinar is over. If you've submitted the question non-anonymously, we have your email address and would love to follow up. Lucas and Lemi, thank you very much for being with us today. I want to thank the audience for your time and participation. As the webinar ends or as you exit, there is a questionnaire. It's really valuable and important feedback for us here at Japan House. So please take the time to submit the questionnaire. Also here through Sunday, November 28th, we're continuing to exhibit WAVE, New Currents in Japanese Graphic Arts. It's a group show featuring 55 contemporary graphic and illustration artists. Some really exciting work there, and actually pieces from 2 of the artists are currently out on a sweepstakes. So if you're interested, please enter the sweepstakes, and I hope that you may win. I'd also like to thank folks at Japan International Broadcasting TV, the Ministry of the Environment, the Agency for Cultural Affairs, and the Japan Arts Council. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thank you. ありがとうございました。さようなら。